What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today I am pleasantly surprised to bring you the MiG-23M, I think it is. MiG-23M has gotten a lot of bad press since its release. It's not the best plane, I'll admit it, but compared to what other content creators were saying about it, I was really expecting to not enjoy this plane at all. I'm happy to report to you that it's actually not the worst plane in the game. 11.0 worthy, maybe not, but it's certainly not up there quite as bad as the Mirage 3E, if you guys have ever flown that. Now, the first thing I'd like to point out is that I don't use the typical everyday loadout you see most people taking on MiG-23s, which would be the 4R60s and then 2 of the KH-23s, I think they are, either the radar or the IR variant. I don't like those missiles, to be honest. They're fun. You can get some pretty cool head-on kills. You will actually see a clip of me using them. They do have some pretty nice range on them, and it is nice to once in a while get the jump on somebody who isn't expecting a 6-kilometer IR launch. So considering they're not going to have any RWR warning, and seeing how far away you are, they're just not going to expect a missile, and yeah, you can occasionally pick up a nice kill with them. But I think the best loadout for this plane is simply 4 of the R13 M1s, I believe they're called. Sorry, it's been a while since I looked at them, but I don't like R60s at all, especially not at 11.0, where pretty much everything has flares. They're pretty useless in my opinion. If anybody sees you launch an R60, they're just going to flare it. They really don't even have to cut the afterburner to flare it away, like you would with every other missile in the game. On top of that, they are painfully short-range missiles for something like a MiG-23. The MiG-23 likes flying fast, it likes flying in straight lines, and you don't really want to get too close to anybody. Now, it's going to happen, obviously, but in a perfect world, you don't get the plane too close to any of the enemies, you launch your missiles from kind of far away, and you go on to the next target. The R60s aren't going to let you do that. You have to be within 2 kilometers minimum for the R60, or maximum, excuse me. 2 kilometers maximum for the R60, meaning you probably want to get a little closer than that for most launches, but it's just not a viable option, in my opinion, for the MiG-23. So the MiG-23 certainly hasn't got the best loadout going for it, but 4R13 M1s isn't the worst, and if you are one of those players that wants to use 4R60s and 2 of the KH-23s, then go for it, more power to you. I just personally wouldn't recommend it. Another thing that the MiG-23 doesn't really have in its favor is countermeasures. At least it has countermeasures, that's worthy of noting, but it's only got 12 of them, and you can either have 12 flares, 12 chaff, or a little mix of both. Personally, I don't think the MiG-23's countermeasures work. I am 100% under the belief that they're broken. I've tried using the flares by cutting the afterburner completely, even throttling down the engine as I deploy the flares. I think I know how to deploy flares. I've been using them with every other jet in the game with perfect effect. Yet the MiG-23, it seems none of the missiles that I try to flare ever actually get distracted by the flares. Now, it could just be because AIM-9Js are that good and they don't really track flares at all, which is half true, but still, cutting the afterburner, dropping flares, steering the missile into your flares, it really should be at least somewhat distracted by the flares. It just doesn't seem the case for the MiG-23, so I tried using chaff, and I'm not the biggest fan of chaff. It doesn't really have a place in this game, in my opinion. Most of the radar missiles in this game are easy enough to outmaneuver in the first place, and I just find myself not really ever needing chaff. So you can take the flares, but at least in my experience, don't rely on them working. You're probably just going to have to outmaneuver most missiles and try to just not get them launched at you in the first place. Which brings me to my main, overall conclusion of the MiG-23 is I would probably just fly it like an F-104. People often will compare the MiG-23 to planes like the F-4 Phantom, claiming that there's something like a budget F-4. And while I understand the connection between the two aircraft, I think you'd be much better off playing the MiG-23, like I said, like an F-104. Use a similar playstyle and you will have a lot more success, rather than trying to fly it like an F-4. The MiG-23 lacks something major that the F-4 does not, and that is a cannon. I mean, the MiG-23's cannon is complete trash, probably one of the worst cannons, if not the worst cannon, in top tier jets. while the F4 has the M61 Vulcan, which is without a doubt the best cannon in jets. So fly it fast, fly it straight, and try not to get into gun range of anything because you can't use your guns really, and don't rely on your countermeasures, they're just kind of there as a last resort. You can see right here I'm using the KH-23 missiles to some success. I'm shooting targets that have no idea I'm on their 6, and even if they did, they probably just didn't expect a missile to hit them from that range because, I mean, MiG-23 has a very unique missile with that long-range infrared capability. If you are going to use the KH-23s though, I will recommend to not use the R13M1s in tandem with them like you see me. I just love the R13M1, I think it's a way better missile than the R60, so that's why I had both of those together. However, if you, like I said, if you're using the KH-23, then you should probably go with the R60s just because the R13M1 and the KH-23, at least from a rear aspect launch, are pretty similar in range. Obviously the KH-23 is going to have a little more range and it can reach out a little further than the R13M1, but they're just so similar from a 6 o'clock launch that it really doesn't matter. One thing though, obviously, is the KH-23 can lock frontal aspect, but you have to use it within very short ranges, and given that the KH-23 doesn't really have a lot of G tolerance, it doesn't pull very hard. Really, the only time that you're actually going to get a frontal aspect launch off is in a direct head-on, just because of that short range and the high closure rates, combined with low G pulling from the missile. It's just not very realistic, and hence also why I don't use them in the first place. So those were some nice clips of the MiG-23 getting some high number of kills in a match. It does have the capability to do that, though I will say it's not very capable of carrying matches. So I don't like lying to you guys, this is how your average game is going to look start to finish. I mean, I do get a lot of kills in this game. You saw a very early kill on that FGR with the R13M1, pretty long range launch, but that's what the missile is capable of. And then we get another kill on the F104 who just isn't checking his 6, same thing with his F5, and once again an FG1 just kind of walks right in front of us here and we get a free kill on him. Now these situations are great, and you could argue that any plane could have gotten 4 kills in that situation, and you would probably be right, with the exception of a plane carrying R60s, hence why I don't take R60s. They just don't have the kind of range that you saw me launching those missiles from. However, since I do take the R13s instead of all those R60s, I'm now out of missiles and I'm down to guns. And as I said earlier, the MiG-23 does not have good guns. These are some of, if not the worst cannons at top tier. As I said, we get a nice shot onto the Mirage, the guns fail us, we get nothing more than a hit, and now we're stuck with 2 Mirages on R6 and a J35. And an F5, who I didn't really see coming, and he just kind of starts spraying, as US players do. It doesn't really matter how good you do in a top tier game, America's pretty much always going to win. They've definitely got the highest win rate, that's why you see US versus US on most top tier matches, and that's why I've been shying away from top tier. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and good luck with the MiG-23.